It's the day after a very tough loss by the Philadelphia Flyers to the cellar-dwelling Columbus Blue Jackets, a 3-2 shootout defeat. And we're breaking down the fallout. I'm Charlie O'Connor with PHLY Sports. The big story last night, aside from a loss to a team that the Flyers really should beat, was the decisions by John Tortorella leading up to the loss, specifically the scratching of Cam Atkinson and Morgan Frost, which left the Flyers with 11 forwards, including Rhett Gardner, an AHL veteran who has only 4 points in 21 AHL games this season, and Nick Deslauriers, who was scratched on Tuesday and averages fewer than 10 minutes a game this season. Unsurprisingly, in the third period, when the Flyers are trying to protect a 2-0 lead, both those guys essentially were benched. So in the third period, coming off of a really tough road trip, a road trip where the team didn't play that well, an exhausting trip out west, Tortorella had the rotation down to 9 forwards, and the Flyers blow a 2-0 lead, lose in a shootout. So today it was time for John Tortorella essentially to face the music. And Tortorella, while he didn't come at the reporters who were critical of the team's performance last night, namely myself, check out my column at allphly.com, and Kevin Kurtz at The Athletic also was critical of the lineup decisions from Tortorella last night. He basically just went with positivity. John Tortorella said he liked the energy from the team. He liked the game for the most part. Felt like they slipped after the second goal, the game tying goal, which is a little fluky. It bounced off of a stick. That was the only time he felt like the energy flagged. He felt, aside from that, felt the team played a really good game. It just seemed like Tortorella, without coming at the criticism directly, wanted to maybe change the narrative a bit and maybe make things a little bit more positive. He wanted to make it clear he felt like the team, despite the outcome, played a pretty good game, and he has full confidence in them. Going back to the big story, though, the Atkinson Frost scratches. Tortorella openly said both of those players will be back in the lineup on Saturday, so expect Atkinson and Frost to make their returns after their respective one-game absences. Atkinson, we have a little bit more information on because Cam Atkinson was willing to speak with the media after practice today. He talked about the conversation he had with John Tortorella regarding the scratch. He said it was a positive conversation, and Atkinson said, "Look, I take full ownership of the scratching. It was deserved." Atkinson obviously hasn't scored for 22 games. He's struggling. But Tortorella made it clear that it went beyond a lack of goals. John Tortorella had a really interesting quote, and he said, "I have too much respect for Cam Atkinson to let him continue to go down the road he was going." Essentially, Tortorella felt like he was seeing other slippages in Atkinson's game beyond not being able to score goals. Obviously, that's a key part of his game. But he felt like Atkinson was going down a tough road, and he wanted to give him a reset. So Atkinson basically didn't fall on the sword, but he more or less said he deserved it, and he's going to try to respond to this as positively as he can. The hope on both sides is that a reset will do Atkinson well. Morgan Frost, on the other hand, did not make himself open to the media while we were speaking with Atkinson. Frost left the locker room and did not return to speak with the media. However, interesting thing, John Tortorella actually was very complimentary of Morgan Frost when we spoke with John Tortorella after practice. Now, Tortorella explained that he had 2 conversations with Morgan Frost prior to the scratching. They had one conversation on the plane ride home from Western Canada, where basically Tortorella implied that he gave him the heads up that, hey, you might be sitting, and gave him a general idea of what the coaching staff's thought process was. Then, because they didn't have a morning skate yesterday before the game, called Morgan Frost to give him the specific reasons for why Morgan was being scratched. However, the positive sign here, I think, maybe for both parties, is Morgan Frost apparently today went to John Tortorella and requested a third meeting with him to really dive into the weeds of the decision. John Tortorella is an interesting guy because John Tortorella, while he certainly wants his players to respect him, he certainly demands that from them, he wants them to push back on him sometimes. He wants them to argue with him, to get in his face, and he doesn't mind yelling contests. If anything, I kind of wonder if the fact that Morgan Frost hasn't been willing to do this necessarily in the past, when he's been sat down, hasn't been willing to come right back at Torts and challenge him, I almost wonder if that's one of the reasons why Tortorella isn't seemingly the biggest Morgan Frost fan. So the fact that Morgan Frost came to see Tortorella today and expressed his disagreement for some of the thought processes behind the scratching, John Tortorella basically said he loved that. And he thinks that this could be a real path forward for the two of them. So, look, I'm still skeptical that Morgan Frost has a long-term future here. I'm skeptical that he's ever going to be the kind of player that John Tortorella really likes. But this could be a turning point, maybe, because this could show John Tortorella that, hey, maybe this Morgan Frost kid has a little bit more fight, a little bit more pushback than I thought he did. So expect to see Morgan Frost and Cam Atkinson back in the lineup on Saturday. We'll see how they both do. Morgan Frost, I think, was playing better than Cam Atkinson. I don't think Morgan Frost was playing great, but I think Frost was playing better. I think he was helping his line to control play. He was distributing pretty well. He made some plays in the power play. I think his benching was less justified than the Atkinson benching, which is why I expect Frost to play better than Atkinson, because I think Frost isn't that far away from playing his best hockey. That said, Atkinson's a proud veteran, so it'll be interesting to see how he responds if he comes out, with real fire, with real intensity, throwing his weight around. He's not a big guy, but he's an intense guy. Maybe they'll get the best out of Cam Atkinson on Saturday and the best out of Morgan Frost. And even though I disagree with the decision to scratch both of them and go with Red Gardner rather than maybe call up a better prospect to maybe make it so the ice time can be a little bit more evenly distributed in the third, maybe it'll pay off by both those recently scratched players having big games against Calgary on Saturday. We'll have to wait and see, but that's about all I have from practice in Voorhees. For PHLY Sports, Charlie O'Connor signing off. Check out our post-game show on Saturday and our first show back in the studio in 2024 later Friday. Should be up around 4 p.m. on our podcast streaming services and on YouTube. Thanks again.